Hi everybody, I'm Gio. This story is called Higher. Our pilot sounded the alarm. We'd reached jumping altitude, 14,000 feet, and had leveled off. It was a child's play compared to the 40,000-foot jumps I'd done back in the Army. But considering the terror and excitement in the woman's eyes, this was high enough. It would be the most terrifying and exhilarating 30 seconds of her life. I inwardly chuckled, remaining calm and professional on the outside. You never forget your first time jumping out of an airplane. It feels like it should last longer, but it goes quick. She wasn't the only person jumping today. 2 of her friends were tandem jumping with us. Tandem jumping involves a special harness where the jumpee, in this case, the 21-year-old birthday girl, is attached to the experienced jumper. Today, that's me. I checked her camera feed on her helmet. We would film her face the entire way down. I'm Marcus Osterson, and I used to keep track of the number of jumps I had made since I had started years ago, but I had made so many. My brother, Josiah Osterson, was our pilot, and my buddy and best friend, Franco, who couldn't wait to get back into the harness, helped out. We had a couple of employees helping us out with both our guests and the LZ down below. It was our client's birthday, and what better way to start the day than by jumping out of an old airplane that smelled of oil and exhaust? Sounds like perfection. 1 minute until we're in position, Josiah said over my headset. What he meant was that, based on prevailing weather conditions, that would be the best place to jump out and just sail to the LZ. That stood for landing zone. Birthday girl is first, I yelled, and we took our position. My buddy, Franco, he was also jumping, but not in tandem with anybody, opened the door of the old Pack 750. Me, Josiah, and Franco had pooled all our money together to scrape enough to buy the old girl and start our business, the Vegas High Flyers. We'd actually be in the black if it weren't for insurance costs. The girl I was tandem jumping with turned and said something, but over the wind from the door and everybody shouting, I couldn't make out what she said. I did make out the tiny voice in my earpiece. Josiah yelled, "Marcus, there's a military guy on the ground who wants to talk to you." "I'm not in the Army anymore," I yelled back. "You know the Army," Josiah yelled. "He'll have to wait his turn," I yelled, as the jump light lit. The girl in the harness tried to protest, but I jumped anyway, directly into freefall, directly into a semi-sunny sky that stretched into forever. The other tandem jumpers joined us, then Franco. The girl with me was a screamer. The loudest scream that ever existed came from her and was recorded for everyone to experience her. Her friend was a swearer. She used every swear word in the book that ever existed. The rest of us chuckled. Their reactions made me remember the first jump I had ever made. It never gets old. Physically, the jump only takes 30 to 40 seconds. Mentally, it lasts a lifetime. The horizon seemed to make a huge 80-mile circle around us. It let me see into the desert, in the not-too-distant city of Las Vegas. The world at 10,000 feet was intense and personal. Because of the wind howling as we passed through it, communication was limited, mostly hand gestures. That would change once the parachute opened. The client screamed and screamed and screamed. The altimeter on my wrist cycled through numbers, and we quickly approached 5,000 feet. Since this was a tandem jumps, regulations required I pull the parachute at 4,500 feet. I counted down. The ground both looked far away and close up at the same time. The horizon quickly changed, and details far below became apparent. Like the guy gesturing towards the LZ, I saw the numbers arrive on my wrist and pulled the cord. My white and blue primary chute flew out of the main pack, and in seconds opened like a beautiful flower. The sudden tug told me that the air had caught us. We seldom have to use the reserve chute. I had back in my army days, but mostly as practice exercises. If the main chute doesn't open, then you've screwed up packing your chute. And so did your buddy, who was supposed to double-check that you did it right. I always held my breath at this moment. Hollywood had made it seem that parachute accidents happened every other day. Reality is that they don't happen. Out of 3 million jumps last year, only 8 resulted in fatalities. That makes it the safest form of travel on the planet. Except to my eardrums. Would this lady ever stop screaming? Now that we'd stopped free-falling, I pointed out some of the sights. She calmed down and we effortlessly glided to the LZ. We were the first to land, ducking and rolling to avoid tangling into the chute, followed by Franco as he filmed us. "Did you have fun?" I yelled. She was jumping up and down and saw her parents. As soon as I disconnected her from the tandem harness, she flew to them, screaming and yelling, and a minute later her friend joined her, equally as excited. As expected, I and my team were forgotten. We were the first stage for her birthday celebrations. We'd email them the videos of their freefall later in the day as soon as the packet was put together. Another day earning a paycheck in paradise. The best time to inspect and pack your chute is right after you use it. I spread my chute out, performed the walk-around, and, not seeing any damage, packed it away in the main chute bag. I'd have one of my buddies check it later. An older man wearing a casual army uniform stood nearby and waited the 4 minutes for me to finish packing the chute. After I did, I walked over to him, letting my smile ease out of my face. I hadn't seen this man for years, but I would always remember him. Sergeant Tom Collins, but we always called him Sarge. "Somebody's still in the Army," I said. "Not in 2 years. I retire," he said. "Hey, Franco, Josiah, Sarge is here," I yelled at the others. Me and Franco and Josiah knew who Sarge was. We'd all served together, back in the day. Was that 5 years ago? Sarge was 20 years or so older than us, with a voice that could have easily shouted to the upper atmosphere. He still wore his hair in a buzz cut, but it was more gray than black. Just like I expected, even after all these years, he'd kept in shape, and though his face had aged, he didn't sport a wrinkle. Beside him was a younger version of himself, except he wore his dark brown hair long in some contemporary K-pop style, and wore what I guessed were expensive, imported clothes tailored to his body. A second man vaguely resembled the other two, except his short hair was more blonde than dark, and he wore a comfortable gray t-shirt and faded Levi shorts. A worn leather bracelet with a peace emblem on it wrapped around his left wrist, and his right hand kept playing with it. The man wearing the imported clothes looked like he had a gym body, which meant it was all for show. I'd known guys like that back in the Army. It looked great, but I bet he couldn't run 2 miles. The more casual man didn't have the obvious muscles of the first, but he moved like a long-distance swimmer. I'd bet he could hold his own in a 5K race against any of us. Both men were younger than my 28. As I remember, Sarge had talked about his 2 sons. Twins, I think. I guess they were fraternal. I'd finished packing the chute. 2 rules about packing a chute. Inspect and pack it the first moment you can. A quick examination could save problems and your life on the next jump. And the second rule, don't interrupt a man who is packing a chute until he's finished. Sarge taught us both rules. "If you don't need me for a minute," Josiah said through the comm, "I'm going to land, refuel, get things ready for this afternoon's flight. Somewhere in there I'll find a sandwich. Tell Sarge I said hi." "Don't you want to tell him yourself?" Franco asked. Josiah snorted and said, "Hello? I'm still flying the plane 14,000 feet above you. It will be at least 45 minutes before I get back here." The memories with Sarge back in the Army were mostly good. He did have a temper, and the few times I messed up, he let me have it. For a moment, I missed those days, but only for a moment. Once I finished packing the chute, Sarge and his two sons approached. "Marcus, Franco, good to see you again. Let me present my twin sons, Lane, the elder twin, and Kane, the younger twin. They have a birthday coming up. I was hoping you could help me with." I stood up and said, "Long time, Sarge. Josiah says hi, but he's got to take care of the plane." Franco came over and shook Sarge's hand. "Quite the little business you've got going on here," Sarge said. "We're doing all right," I said. "It pays the bills, pays the insurance, and gives us a little spending money, but we still haven't made it rich." "All well, we're jumping out of airplanes," Franco quipped. We kept up a light conversation as we stowed our gear in a nearby truck, and then Sarge seriously said, "My boys are turning 23 in a week. I want them to experience a little bit of what I enjoy. I thought we could go parachuting together, and I'd take all of us out to an early dinner or something so we could catch up. I know it's short notice, but I hoped you had an opening." "We have a waiting list," I said. "Charge him extra. I still have flashbacks to that Sunday early morning training exercise," Franco said. It was too early to be called morning, and all that work for a comm drill, I said. "Sarge, I hated you for a month after that," Franco said. Sarge chuckled and said, "But you passed the next surprise inspection. Anyway, I'll pay any special fees because I want the day to be amazing." "When did you get to be rich?" Franco asked. Sarge chuckled and said, "We're not rich, but my wife has played the stock market, and she keeps me to a budget. Because of her, we have a nice retirement." "Dad might be in the Army, but Mom is the commanding officer in this family," Kane said, also chuckling. The older son, Lane, rolled his eyes and somehow managed to look bored. He pulled his phone out and checked something. "Can we hurry this along? I have a date." I opened up my phone, pulled up the calendar, and looked at dates and times around the dates Sarge had indicated. Every day was full, except Tuesday afternoon, 2 days after their birthday. "Normally, I'd say no," I said, "but we have a cancellation. A special enrollment requires 20% increase on fees and a deposit. Your first jump will be in tandem with one of us, and we will require you to attend 3 training sessions to make sure you're ready. Once we feel you're ready, we'll jump. Have either of you seen a chute up close? Or been skydiving before?" Both guys shook their head, and then Sarge said to me, "Marcus, it's my birthday gift, and I'll pay for the premium package for all 3 of us." "Expensive present," Franco said. Franco is Franco. He doesn't do fast, turnaround relationships. When he gets in one, it's a long-term commitment. The poor guy doesn't handle change very well, but he's the most loyal person I've ever met. Somehow, we became friends back in the Army, and he's put up with me since. Kane hesitantly grinned and said, "I've always wanted to see the world, but I never expected it to be like this." Franco clapped him on the back and said, "Nothing to worry about. I think by the time I was 23, I'd made maybe 200 jumps, 300? "Less," I said. "How many times did I leave your snoring butt to ride the plane back to the hangar while I and the guys jumped?" My buddy flipped me off. "I assume you'll come along?" I asked Sarge. Sarge broke into the biggest grin and said, I am going to hate retiring, because I'm going to miss jumping out of airplanes. This is kind of a last hurrah for me, and a dream come true. They're giving me a desk job until I retire. That's why I'm spending the money while I can." "Aw," Franco said, turning to me. "I'm getting all teary-eyed. Let's charge him extra." Sarge rolled his eyes and said, "I'm already paying for the premium package, and now you want to charge me more? Make it worth it." "We could see if my sister Lisa will tandem jump with us, throw in some sex appeal," Franco said. "The ladies might do it for Lane, but not for Kane," Sarge said. "He's gay." "I'm loud and proud," Kane said. "Family embarrassment is more like it. Dresses like a homeless person. Can't even take him clubbing. Something with rainbows and unicorns is his speed," Lane sneered, not even looking up from his phone. The conversation chilled. Trust Franco not to notice the drop in temperature, or maybe ignore it, because he said, "You'll have to wear your Speedo, Marcus. Gay skydiving in the extreme." I blushed, getting in the mood, and said, "Kane, guess that means you're riding with me. Imagine the weird tan lines." We chuckled. It was a fun moment. And then it wasn't. Lane immediately said, "Dad, I told you I don't want to do this. I'm not learning how to skydive. Your army stuff is stupid, and I'm not participating in your midlife fantasies. Just give me the money to go party." There was silence, and Sarge looked away a moment. I glanced at Franco. By the disturbed look in his eyes, he caught that clue. Franco usually shut down when crap like this happened. Trouble in paradise. Franco folded his arms and looked at anything besides any of us. Sarge looked at the younger twin, Kane, and asked, "Is that how you feel also?" I shrugged, attempting to salvage the situation, and said, "You can't know if you like something until you try it at least once. Besides, we have a cancellation next week, which would let us get in the 3 training sessions, let you get familiar with the shoots, and watch some of our old videos. Lane, Kane, you don't need to worry. We have 2,500 jumps just as a company alone, not to mention the number of times we rode the chute on solo trips or back in our army days. Since your dad is paying for it, just try it and you might find you'll like it. We'll keep you safe." "We haven't lost anyone yet," Franco said. I could kick him, but he was trying to be a good host. "I'm in, Dad," the younger twin said. "I'll need to let work know what day I'm taking off." "Tuesday afternoon," I said, and pulled up the scheduling app. I liked this man. Cute, smart, relaxed. He wasn't afraid to try new things. Adventurous. He fit in with me and Franco and Josiah. Kane wasn't an army guy. He probably didn't know how to fight. I bet he and I would get along just fine, though. Time to get a little bit flirty and see where it goes. How does training on Saturday evening, Sunday evening, and Monday afternoon sound? Each session will take an hour, max. We need to get you familiar with the gear, make a few practice landings, teach you a few emergency protocols, and go through the forms you'll need to sign. You know, the basics. "Except for Saturday," Sarge replied. "I'm in. We have an ROTC exercise schedule that I can't get out of." "That's okay," I said, and looked at Kane. "You up for dinner? I'll buy. Do you guys want to come?" Franco somehow grinned and rolled his eyes at the same time and said, "Three's a crowd." Sarge took a small step back. "Wait a second, are you asking my son out?" I locked eyes with Sarge and said, "I guess I am. What do you say?" "It will give us a chance to talk about the jump," Kane said. "I'm in. How about Max's American Bistro? I hear they have an all-new menu and a new chef who's pretty good." "New chef?" my buddy asked. "Heard the old one had a massive heart attack," Kane said. "You're asking my son out?" Sarge asked. "Relax, Sarge," I said. "You already know us, and you're familiar with parachuting, so you won't miss anything. After we talk about the jump, Kane and I can go dancing or something." How did a simple birthday present turn into a date? Sarge said. Whatever. Tell me all about it on Sunday. We'll start talking about it now, I said. Follow me to the landing field, and while we wait for Josiah in the plane, we'll talk about pricing and then have lunch together. Sarge, Kane, me, and Franco were leaving when I realized the older twin wasn't following. I turned to look at him wearing his designer clothes and his designer haircut and his expensive phone and looking like he'd be more comfortable in a club, and then I accidentally said the wrong thing. Coming, Lane? This concerns you too. The dam broke on old family drama that I didn't understand. I can't believe you're making me do this, Dad. Lane, the older twin yelled. I've told you 1,000,000 times I don't want anything to do with the army or your old friends or any of this. So, what happens? The first chance you get, you ambush me and make me look stupid for having a brain of my own. Give me the money so I can party with my date. Son, I didn't mean, Sarge started to say. What do you always say? Lane sneered. The army changed my life. The army made me grow up. I saw parts of the world I never knew existed because I was in the army. I've made friends that will last a lifetime. Your mother and I would have never met if I hadn't had that accident in London. She's an army nurse and the love of my life. Give it a rest, Dad. Some of us don't care. It's who I am, Sarge said. It's our family. Get real, Dad. You only want to brag to all your friends about how your son joined the army. You never cared that I had a 4.0, and you never cared how I earned my way into junior business leaders of Vegas. You never came to my graduation. I'm nothing more than a talking point, the elder twin yelled. Do you know how tired of all this army stuff I am? It disgusts me. Don't worry about me. I'll take an Uber to any place away from you people. Lane, don't be a jerk, Kane said. Dad was in Iraq and then Okinawa. We video conferenced, remember? Give him a Dad of the Year trophy, Lane sneered again, pulled out his phone and activated the Uber app and walked away. Lane, Kane shouted. Let me handle this, Sarge said, and followed the elder twin. As Sarge and Lane left, I turned to Kane and asked, Have they always been like this? Pretty much, Kane said. Throwing tantrums is how Kane always gets his way. Dad will give him money for something just to make him happy. Just watch. Dad will give in, and we won't go skydiving. Good God, here I thought we'd finally do something fun. Sounds like an army man is hiding inside your skin, I said. You ever think about joining up? Franco asked. Dad has this weird idea about his boys doing everything together, and Lane talked Dad out of it, Kane said. Lane wanted his degree first, find a wife outside the service, because he said he hated moving around so much. Or he hated life on base. Lane has Dad doing whatever he wants. Can't imagine Sarge being a softie. Why? I asked. Kane thought a moment and finally shrugged his shoulders. Lane is the firstborn, and Dad wants him to like him. In a way, Lane was right about college. I graduate this spring in engineering, though Lane has another 1.5 years to go. I gave him a half smile and said, Congratulations. Time to celebrate. Let's have lunch together and talk about your first free fall. Lunch went well, and it was obvious that Kane was as into me as I was into him. But duty called. We had afternoon clients ready to take their turn in the skies. Sarge returned as we finished a light lunch. Best not to drop out of an airplane after a heavy meal. Job could get ugly. But it already had. Lane said one of his friends had a classic casino bachelor party, Sarge said, including classic cars and costumes. Even a local artist crashed the party. He wants to impress all his frat friends and his girlfriend and throw a huge themed party for his birthday. I want you two to do things together. Be brothers. Think how fun a night of gambling and partying will be. My buddy and I exchanged a quick glance. Who would have thought that Sarge could be such a pushover and give in? Still, it wasn't up to me to solve this. I presented the pricing options, payment plans, showed Kane videos of some past jumpers, and we told him all our stories. The rest lay between him and his dad. "You've done it again, Dad," Kane said, "letting Lane take control while ignoring what I want. Not this time. I'm going skydiving, Dad. Lane can have that life. I want something different, something that might matter to somebody, something that matters to me anyway." Sarge's face became like stone, and he said, "I want my boys to be brothers, to be close." "You can't force something like that," Kane said. "I'm going skydiving for my birthday. You can either come with me, take pictures from the landing zone, or get out of the way so I don't land on you. I'm still going." "You make it sound like I don't have a choice," Sarge said. Kane's smile was beautiful, and for some reason, I felt proud of him. We exchanged contact info and arranged to call each other later. On Saturday, I brought my laptop, and we went to Max's American Bistro to enjoy their Texas burger. We spent hours talking over my old Army stories, or my stories about skydiving, or the places I'd been. Kane, like a sponge, absorbed every second, and his eyes glistened. Something seemed to blossom inside him. I drove him home, and sitting outside on the stairs leading up to his family's third-floor apartment, we talked and connected. Kane had an adventurous spirit that I began to love. "Is it too late for me?" Kane said in a rare, serious moment. "Have I missed my life?" I was being flippant and a bit of a jerk for not realizing what the man was really asking when I said, "How can you miss something you've never had?" A moment's silence, a sudden inhale, and Kane replied, "You're right. I'm always living in Lane's shadow, always looking for Dad's approval, always living for someone else, never for myself." I might have said the wrong thing, but I didn't know the right thing to say. I simply said, "I think you're just fine the way you are. Just be you." He nodded and said, "I don't like my life." Then he looked at me with that look I recognized, his eyes slightly moist. We kissed, a deep kiss, one that had a yearning behind it, or maybe a wish, maybe a hope. "Happy birthday," I whispered as we kissed again. I left him soon after. We had an early morning flight scheduled, an anniversary adventure paid for by the wife for her husband, another retired Army officer. I met Kane for the next 2 meetings before our tandem flight on Tuesday. Sarge paid for everything, but Lane never showed up. Tuesday afternoon, the plane had just taken off, and we were making final adjustments to the tandem harness. Kane couldn't stop grinning. His enthusiasm infected the whole plane. Even Sarge had to chuckle. "No Lane?" I yelled. We had another 2 minutes before we were at altitude. Kane wasn't the only tandem jumper this trip. The other had been a guy dared by his friends to jump on his 21st birthday, which was tomorrow. A pained look flashed across Sarge's face, and rather than shout back, he shook his head. "Took the money and run?" Franco yelled. Sarge didn't respond. At about 30 seconds before jump time, Franco opened the jump door, and we lined up. Kane and I were second. "I have something I need to confess," Kane yelled. "You do something naughty?" I jokingly asked. Suddenly, the birthday boy and his tandem partner jumped just ahead of us. I had him pegged as a swearer, and he didn't disappoint. I enhanced my vocabulary. Kane crossed his arms, tight, and we jumped. Kane's first words were, "Oh my God!" And I swear he screamed it for at least 20 seconds. Even though I held him and his mouth was next to me, the wind drowned out most of what he said. My buddy kept even with us as we fell, shooting non-stop pictures of me and Kane. Within a day or so, Kane would have a one-of-a-kind video of his flight. He calmed down a little, and I pointed out our landing zone, the distant Strat's tower, and then the group of us flew together and held hands in an impromptu circle as the ground spread out before us. We hung in the forever sky. It always amazed me about how big the sky is and how beautiful. Maybe that's why I like skydiving. It's a glimpse of what I imagine heaven would be like. A magical moment, and Kane and his dad whooped. We all did. Then the moment ended, and we let go of each other. A few seconds later, it was time to pop the chutes. My blue and white chute opened wide in the sunlight, seeming to absorb the light above us, and glowed. Franco had timed his chute a little later than us, and soon his orange chute flowed open. He kept his camera trained on us the whole time. "Did you enjoy your first time?" I asked Kane. Kane smiled and said, "I want to do it again." I held him tight for a moment and asked, "What did you want to confess?" "I saw a recruiter yesterday," Kane said. "I didn't tell Dad." "Why?" "I'm tired of waiting for Lane's approval, or Dad putting Lane first so he can be a good dad. It's time for me to be me," Kane said. "This is something I want." Instead of answering, I simply said, "We'll deal with it after we land. Lift your legs just like we practiced, cross your arms, and Houston, we're going down." And down we went, laughing. We missed the LZ by a good 20 feet, and, well, a couple of guys ran over to unhook us. I quietly said in Kane's ear, "Tell me what you need, and I'll help." Sarge was on the phone with someone, telling him how incredible it had been, and I guessed it was Lane. Me, Kane, Sarge, Sarge's wife, Franco, his girlfriend, and Josiah and his date all went out to eat. Kane and I were acting the couple. It didn't surprise anybody. The excitement burst out Kane's eyes. He had loved today. Josiah had worked overtime to get his video ready, and I think Kane had watched it 10 times before we went out to eat. Franco had brought his laptop, and we all leaned forward to watch Kane scream as he fell from the plane, and the funny thump as we touched down outside the LZ. "Thanks, Dad," Kane said. "This has been the best day of my life." Sarge chuckled, scooted his chair away from the table, and then rested his elbows on the table. "Happy birthday," he said. "So you're retiring in 2 years," Josiah said, conversationally. Sarge's wife looked at him, then at us. "Trust my husband not to say anything, but they retired him from physical duty. His last heart test had some odd readings." I sat there, stunned. Sarge had seemed immortal, but age caught up to the best of us. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. Sarge shrugged and said, "I wanted one last hurrah before Doc could ban me from the things I love." "Today was more than just a birthday celebration," Franco said. Sarge nodded. "I wanted to do something special for my boys, but we saw how that turned out. You see, the money is about to dry up. I have to focus on retirement and potential medical bills. Plus, I promised my wife a tour to Alaska. It's a lot safer and calmer than jumping out of airplanes, and it will give us a chance to reconnect," his wife said. "No more big fancy presents," Sarge said. Kane reached out and took Sarge's hand, and Sarge's wife took the other. Kane gave it a squeeze and said, "It was never about the money. I only wanted to spend time with my dad, even if all we did was sit on the porch and drink beer." "Have you told Lane?" Franco asked. Sarge seemed uncomfortable when he said, "I tried to, but Lane never listens. He expects me to pay for everything, like I have always done. I see now that that was a mistake, but it hurts, when no matter what you do or how much money you spend, one of your sons doesn't like you." "Dad?" Kane questioned. "I never had to worry about you, Kane," Sarge said. "You showed me a long time ago that I could trust you, not only with the car when you started dating, but with money and work and taking care of yourself. I guess that's why I left you alone. Lane can't do any of that. Can't save, can't keep a job. I was hoping to keep too close so Lane could learn something from you." "I don't know what to say," Kane said. Sarge cleared his throat and briefly smiled as he wiped the tears from his eye. "The recruiter you're seeing is an old buddy of mine and told me everything. He'll do good by you, and by me. You have my blessing to join the army." "Just remember to call home from time to time," Sarge's wife said. I went with Kane next time he saw the recruiter, his heart light and his smile happy and adventurous. He made the commitment to join the army right then and there. We went out to dinner and talked until 3 in the morning. He reported to basic in 6 weeks. In too short of a time, we had grown close enough that we spent evenings together, talking. We did 3 more jumps before Kane reported for his 10-week basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, as he started his new life. We didn't leave each other behind. We were boyfriends, kind of close. Something beyond a very deep friendship. I wrote him every week, and he wrote me back, except for the 10th week, the last week of basic. Cell phones were not allowed until then. We talked until his battery went dead. I made arrangements to go to his basic training graduation, scheduled for next week. Afterwards, he had 2 weeks leave before he reported for duty. While Lane partied and wasted the money his dad had given him, Kane kept his locked up in savings and long-term bonds. It would stay safe until he needed it, and since the army took care of him, it would be safe for a long time. We spoke every night, until the night before me and his parents flew to his graduation. Lane was invited, but declined. He had a better party to attend. Me and Sarge and his wife were loading Josiah's car for our trip to the airport. Josiah would drop us off and then pick us up in 4 days. I couldn't wait to see Kane. However, it was Lane I saw next. I was hauling an overnight bag out to the car while Sarge tried to figure out how to make everything fit. Sarge's wife was still inside the house packing roast beef and cheddar sandwiches for us to snack on later while we waited for the airplane. A car drove up, a brand new convertible black Ford Mustang. Guess who drove? Lane. A girl sat in the passenger seat next to him, and 2 guys were in the back seat. In spite of myself, the car impressed me. By the flame decals on the side, I bet it was the tricked-out model. Lane hopped out of the car, looking like a classic frat boy wannabe with below-the-knee pressed Bermuda shorts and a pale yellow polo shirt and penny loafers. He sported salon-styled hair and a professionally shaved face, just like the others. The first question I mentally asked myself was if Sarge had given Lane enough money to buy a car like that. Had he given an equal amount to Kane? Did that mean Kane had a fortune in savings saved up? Lane marched over to his dad and yelled, "Why did you let Kane ruin everything?" Sarge calmly accepted the overnight bag from me and placed it in the trunk before replying, "What are you talking about?" "Kane's not around to ruin anything," I said. Lane looked at me. I don't think he recognized me. "Stay out of this," Lane said. Dad, first you let Kane go parachuting and spend his money doing something stupid. You should have spent the money on our party, but no, I had to have a smaller party because Kane was selfish. You both got equal amounts, Sarge said, and chose what to do with it. Is it Kane's fault he chose something different than you? I asked. I don't know who you are, but keep your mouth shut, Lane yelled. The girl had joined us and somehow draped Lane's arm about her shoulders. I'm Marcus, I said, Kane's boyfriend. Lane looked at me, eyebrows lowered, and sneered, You're the skydiving teacher. Where is Kane? He made me so angry. I want to talk to him. He owes me money for ruining my birthday party. I'm taking my friends to a concert at the Sphere. You wouldn't believe this, but Scarlett is in concert, and I know a guy who'll sell me tickets last minute. This is Scarlett. He hasn't been to Vegas for ages, and it's only tonight. Behind me, Sarge's wife locked up the house and carried a beige shopping bag filled with sandwiches and bags of chips and bottles of Coca-Cola to the car. The girl loudly said, It will be fun. We just need some money. But your wife was stingy and said no when we talked to her on the phone. You have to think about retirement, not expensive concert tickets. So tell Kane to get his butt outside and pay me, Lane said. Sarge looked at his wife, who, for some reason, looked at me. I mentally shrugged and said, You do remember that we invited you to Kane's farewell party a couple of months ago? And that today we're flying to his basic training graduation in Fort Sill, Oklahoma? Kane is most definitely not around to ruin anything. Lane was quiet a moment, his voice turning a little bitter, and then said, Then the money you would have given Kane, you could give me. He won't need it because he has his degree, and the Army pays for everything. I don't. I still have 2 years and a party tonight, so I need you to pay for everything. I thought you only had 1.5 years, his mother said. Marcus, I'm smaller, so I'll squeeze into the back seat with the suitcases. Why don't you ride shotgun? Explain, son, Sarge said. I kind of have to retake a couple of classes, Lane said, looking away. It's not my fault. They were hard. As I told you right after your birthday, Sarge said, I'm retiring. What happened to the money I gave you to finish paying for your 3 remaining semesters? I needed a car, Lane said. Honey, do you realize how much money that was? Sarge's wife said. There is no handouts anymore. We won't be paying your tuition or rent or anything. We are retiring, with a potential 30 years ahead of us, and our money must go to support ourselves. I refuse to be one of those destitute elderly couples who can barely afford electricity and health care. Unbelieving, I muttered. Lane, you spent all your tuition and rent money on a new car? Are you brain dead? That has to be the stupidest decision I've ever heard. And now you're begging for more? Sarge's wife said. Marcus is right, Sarge said. I've failed you because you're 23 and can't stand on your own. This will be the last time I ask, Lane said. You have to help me, or I'll be thrown out on the streets. Borrow some from your friends, I said. I owe them too, Lane said. You owe me, Mom. You gave birth to me. Dad, you raised me. Let me have some of the money you set aside for Kane. No, Sarge's wife said. Honey, we need to leave or we'll miss our flight. House locked up? Sarge asked as his wife climbed into the back seat. His wife nodded, and I climbed into the passenger seat. Sarge pulled his seatbelt on. He turned to Lane and said, You should have learned a thing or two about money from your brother. I guess it's not too late. I'm not a mama's boy, Lane said. Too bad, Sarge said, because I think Kane will be marrying an army man, just like your mom did. Epilogue. We arrived with plenty of time for the graduation. Kane wasn't hard to spot. Wearing his dress uniform, and in better shape than I remembered, there was an ease about the way he walked. about the way he smiled. He was easily the best man in the graduating class, and in many ways looked like a younger version of Sarge. It took him a minute to spot me. He broke into the biggest grin I've ever seen, and we ran to each other and hugged. His arms felt incredible around me, and I realized that his dad was right. There was a wedding coming. Not this year, but maybe the next. His mom wiped a covert tear from her eye and whispered, "Welcome to the family, Marcus." The end. I'm Gio, author and reader of this piece. Thank you everybody for joining me. Because of various concerns, I might not be able to get a story out every week. I'll try, but it might be every 2 weeks. If you'd like to hear more stories about gay men falling in love, stop by my channel. It's Gio Allred on YouTube. Thank you everybody. Peace.